As of February 2022, Michael John Steele is still a Cat A prisoner and has been since January 1998, alongside Jack Womes for the triple murders of Patrick Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe down an isolated farm track in Retton, Essex in December of 1995. Jack Womes last year was declared suitable for release by a parole board panel and was freed after 23 years. In 2006, the pair lost their appeals against their convictions, having already been turned down in March 1999. Lawyers had argued a media deal struck by Supergrass witness Darren Nichols made his evidence at the 1998 Old Bailey trial unreliable. They said Mr. Nichols had entered into arrangements under which he'd been paid for his story and that a financial incentive in their being found guilty. But three appeal judges rejected an argument that the jury might have reached a different verdict if it had known of Mr. Nichols' media contacts. Lord Justice Kay concluded there was no element of unsafety in any of the convictions. However, he did admit the defence had material which enabled them to present Nichols to the jury as a time-served criminal of some sophistication, a drug trafficker and a man with a corrupt relationship with a police officer. The jury nevertheless remained unanimous in their confidence in the essentials of his account. An Essex police spokesman said he was pleased that there was no criticism of the force in the court judgment. Detective Superintendent Kevin Macy said the trial and subsequent appeals have shown that the original investigation was sound and robust. The jury heard all the evidence in great detail and concluded that these men were guilty. The Court of Appeal has now heard all the evidence in great detail and come to the same conclusion. As the decision was announced, Steele shouted from the dock, "This is the most corrupt judgment I have ever heard in all my life." He called to the police in the court, "You are all a corrupt lot and we will be back. You won't always have the bench there to protect you." Defence counsel Baroness Kennedy QC said an application will be made later for permission to appeal to the House of Lords. "The court's judgment has come as something of a surprise to the defence," she said. "The defence has accused police of facilitating Mr. Nichols' meetings with media contacts while he's being held in protective custody." However, the judges did not criticise the conduct of the police. Andrew Munday QC for the Crown said detailed statements from Mr. Nichols had already been taken and recorded in full before he had meetings with a reporter and a literary agent. Steele's solicitor Chris Bowen said, "Whilst I live and breathe and represent Mr. Steele, I will fight to ensure that he does not die in prison for offences he did not commit. Mr. Steele himself would never admit these offences because he did not commit them. He has always protested his innocence and will continue to do so." Mr. Bowen said his legal team were preparing to challenge the ruling in the House of Lords, and he indicated they might fight it in the European courts. Europe may provide a critical key to unlock the door to freedom. The campaign for Mr. Steele will continue to grow. A new front door is about to open. And then 3 years later, Michael Steele was awarded £66,400 in damages for negligent dental care. But the appeal court judges rejected the Home Office's findings and reduced Steele's payment to £44,500. The appeal court heard Steele's feelings fell out at Belmarsh Prison soon after he was given his 3 life sentences. Since then, whilst being moved between high security prisons, Steele has suffered persistent, severe pain. Judge Edward Bailey ruled the Home Office had been negligent in failing to give the dental treatment he needed and awarded him £66,400 damages, including about £250 for every week of toothache he endured. Lady Justice Smith, sitting in the appeal court, said it was a bad case involving persistent, severe pain over nearly 4 years, together with more moderate pain for 2 years, and some significant deterioration in the general condition of his teeth. Critics described the damages as obscene and claimed the award was further evidence that the compensation culture had got out of control. Lady Justice Smith agreed the Home Office breached the duty it owed Steele to make reasonable arrangements for caring for the killer's teeth. He said that the pain had kept him awake at night and had caused him stress during the day. He submitted that we should take into account that his pain and suffering was aggravated by the fact that he was locked up for much of the day, and had nothing to do other than think of his toothache. I can understand and sympathise with that submission, and I can accept that his situation is a factor which can be taken into account in assessing damages. She reduced his original damages to $25,000 with interest and $16,000 for Steele's pecuniary loss. The total payment comes to $44,500. Steele represented himself after his legal aid was withdrawn. And then in the same year, Michael Steele was battered unconscious and then sued the prison. Steele was left with damaged teeth and a fractured eye socket at HMP Whitemore near Peterborough. He sued the government, which argued the case would not succeed, for £100,000. But at Central London County Court, District Judge Ian Avent said the claim would be allowed to go ahead to a full hearing. The Central London hearing was told how Steele had argued with a Muslim prisoner, referred to only as Miller, in January 2010 after being accused of jumping the queue to use a telephone. The following day he was in the kitchen cooking his dinner when he was hit on the head from behind with what is to believe to have been a metal pot, the court was told. In his claim, Steele said he was told by senior staff that Muslim gangs in prison are impossible to control or discipline because of their numbers. He claimed prison bosses should have done more to protect him from the attack. Judge Avant told the hearing, Mr. Steele's claim is predicated on the basis that Muslim prisoners were a violent threat and that the prison was the most volatile of the high-security dispersal prisons. The Ministry of Justice has argued the claim had no chance of succeeding. But 2 years later, Michael Steele's claim for £100,000 damages was thrown out. After a 4-day county court hearing, Judge Simon Freeland QC refused the damages bid. During the hearing, Central London County Court heard Steele, originally of Great Bentley in Essex, claim staff should have known he was at risk and they should have done more to protect him. He claimed inadequate staffing in his part of the jail had left him open to attack. Mr. Steele fails to establish that the Ministry of Justice did not take responsible care for his safety, the judge told the court. The officers were all, it seems to me, very close to what occurred by virtue of the rapid response to his assault, said the judge. I reject Mr. Steele's case that there was inadequate staffing levels as unsubstantiated. The judge said the assault could have not been avoided and accepted MOJ evidence that the wing was fully staffed at the time of the attack, which was carried out by a fellow inmate named Miller. Then just 2 years later, in 2020, Michael Steele blamed alleged police corruption for him being wrongly convicted of the notorious triple murders. A parole board panel heard that Steele, who has always insisted he is innocent of the murders, has never taken part in any offender behaviour programmes to address the use of violence during more than 23 years in prison. He also said he believed he should be transferred to an open prison without having to address a tendency to use violence that could cause serious harm. Jack Worms was transferred to Hollandsey Bay Open Prison in Suffolk in 2019 and began working a 6-day week as a mechanic after being branded a model prisoner, and after several COVID delays was released from prison early last year. However, Steele's first ever parole board hearing was less successful, with the application rejected. Steele appeared on grounds that he was falsely accused during the hearing of a number of things, including early signs of dementia, a firearms conviction, a caution for mail he received, and not having been assessed for offender management programs. He also claimed that witnesses in support of his claim had not been called to give evidence, and he was routinely interrupted by the panel whilst representing himself. Judge James Orrell wrote in his verdict the panel accepted there had been a dispute about the offending behaviour programme, but identified the important factors as, first, the applicant was currently prepared to go on the programme, but secondly, he did not think it was necessary. Those two factors were, in the panel's opinion, subject to the overarching problem that during the course of his sentence, the applicant had done no offending behaviour work designed to reduce his risk of causing serious harm. The other two entries relate to observations that may suggest the applicant could be entering into very early stages of dementia. That was an extremely worrying suggestion for the applicant to cope with. Happily, subsequent investigation has shown the suggestion was not correct, but importantly, for this exercise, it is plain that this was not a factor in the decision-making process one way or the other. Additionally, two matters persuade me the panel did not take any account of the alleged caution. The judge said Steele also went off on tangents about being wrongly convicted, police corruption and other matters. He added, "I have detected a preoccupation with at least 5 topics. His belief in his wrongful conviction for murder, the failure to be transferred to open conditions, the failure to be downgraded to Category B status, corruption within a named police force, and lately, a preoccupation that witnesses at the oral hearing committed perjury." I wonder whether his manner of presentation quite naturally attracted interruption. He rejected the appeal, advising Steele to use a lawyer at his next hearing. Michael Steele won't be eligible to apply for release until 2023. A parole board spokesman said lifers typically get a review every 2 years. This will almost definitely be the case for Mr. Steele. The CCRC, the Criminal Cases Review Commission, has been reviewing the convictions of Womms and Steele for the past 3 years after they were provided a new dossier of evidence. The review centres on a confident Met Police corruption report called Operation Tiberius, which detailed how the force had intelligence on a London gang boss offering to a former detective to take out the people who supplied drugs to Leah Betts. This intelligence was never placed before the jury at their trial. A CCRC spokesman said the case remains under review. And in 2021, Michael Steele applied to launch a judicial review into last July's decision not to remove him from maximum security. The Justice Forum sitting at the High Court in Leeds dismissed the bid. Not only had Steele failed to join in rehabilitation courses, he'd shown anger and aggression towards psychologists. Its decision was made on the basis convincing evidence of a significant reduction in his risk of similar reoffending had not been shown. But as part of the judgment, it is revealed that Steele has admitted to being involved in the importation of drugs said to be the reason for the falling out which led to the murders. The report stated the claimant, whilst accepting his involvement in drug importation, has always protested his innocence over the triple murder. Michael Steele, now aged 78, has been in custody in conjunction with these matters since 1996, when he was aged just 53. His 23-year minimum term expired in May 2019. Time is certainly not on Michael Steele's side. The question remains is, will he ever see his freedom? And if Steele had done the classes like Jack Womms, would he too be free? Or would there be another reason why Michael Steele would still be in prison?